Hello everyone, welcome to session 2D, our second of the morning on health, safety and well-being. And hopefully I'll do a better job of chairing this one than the last, where I allowed our first two presenters to get too many questions perhaps, and the third one didn't really get a look in, unfortunately. So I'll try and behave. Chris will keep me in order, and we'll get straight to it. We've got three papers on the topic of health, safety and well-being. Our first one looking at essentially accident reporting and incident reporting in Uganda. We've got something, I suppose, similar in our second paper in terms of exploring the value of near-miss reporting. And then thirdly, we've got some colleagues from Ireland looking at essentially the eating habits, I suppose, of construction workers. I probably summarised that far too succinctly there, but we'll go straight into it. We'll take our presentations, which are pre-recorded, and then immediately after those, we'll take questions from the floor. But please do put some comments into the chat. As we said earlier, Chris is monitoring that as well. So our first one, I'm not quite sure who our presenter is, but we've got Timothy Ngobi, Musa, Manga, Nathan Kibwami, and of course the Polo, who we know very well, from ARCOM. So, construction, occupational safety and health incident reporting, recording, monitoring and management in Uganda. Don't forget, you need to tap to unmute, everyone.
Greetings, my name is Timothy Gideon Ngobi and I'm here to present a paper on behalf of all the co-authors entitled Construction, Occupational Safety and Health Incident Reporting, Recording, Monitoring and Management in Uganda. I hope you enjoy it. The presentation outline will be as follows. I'll give a background to the study. I'll state the problem, the objectives, the justification of the study, the methodology, the results, the conclusions, and the recommendation. The construction industry in Uganda and the world at large is affected by many setbacks in as far as occupational safety and health is concerned. In a study done by Lubega and others in the year 2000, the construction industry was found to be the most dangerous industry by frequency of accidents in Uganda. In Kampala alone, for example, about 3,800 out of every 100,000 workers suffer construction-related injuries, and the fatality rate is 84 in every 100,000, according to Irumba 2014. Sadly, while the statistics might be alarming, they are often incomplete because of underreporting, and therefore there is often underestimation of incidents. This underreporting is mainly due to lack of awareness of the legal reporting requirements, and of course the burden of completing and posting the relevant paperwork in case of occurrence of an incident. Therefore, the problem that this research intended to address is the fact that many accidents on construction sites in Uganda are not documented, reported, or investigated by the relevant authorities. About 50% of construction injuries are never reported, according to Wage Indicator 2019. And according to a study done by Okwell and others in 2019, only about 24% of construction accidents are reported to authorities in Uganda. Now, this underreporting of OSH incidents in Uganda can be partially attributed to the nature of the reporting process or system, something that warrants the investigation into the existing system. The objectives of the research, therefore, were to describe the current process of OSH incident reporting, recording, monitoring, and management in Uganda's construction industry, to identify the weaknesses in the process, and lastly, to suggest measures to improve incident reporting in Uganda's construction industry. Why this research? This research directly addresses itself to Sustainable Development Goal number 8, which is geared toward providing safe working environments for all. There's also need for effective feedback mechanisms that can transmit information derived from incident reports and investigations to be utilized in safety planning. And thus it is important to establish if the existing OSH incident reporting, recording and management system conveniently does so. This study was purely qualitative and it was descriptive and analytical in nature. 2 research methods were selected to complete this study, and one of them was process modeling, which involved discovery of the process through extensive content analysis of peer-reviewed literature and the OSH legislations in Uganda, process mapping using business process modeling and notation 2.0, and thereafter process verification. The second research method was the subject matter expert interviews, which were used for empirical verification and process analysis. These SMEs comprised 2 labor officers, 2 health and safety officers, 2 OSH inspectors, 1 police officer, and 1 medical personnel. Now, commensurate to the approach, all data analysis was done qualitatively. From process discovery, it was found that the as-is process of reporting, recording, monitoring, and management of OSH incidents in Uganda is broken down into 4 sub-processes. And these are workplace incident reporting, management, recording, and compensation sub-process, hospitalization of victim sub-process, incident reporting to the police sub-process, and then national incident reporting, management, and monitoring sub-process. For the first sub-process that happens at the workplace, there are 2 process attributes, and that is initial workplace incident reporting and management, and incident recording and compensation. The hospitalization sub-process is usually engaged in case of severe injury or death of a victim. And then the incident reporting to the police also follows the same thing, which is severe injury or death, and it involves the notification of the police and the investigation of the incident. The national incident reporting, management, and monitoring involves reporting or giving a formal notice to the Labor Department about an injury or death of a worker on a construction site. And then the monitoring sub-process involves workplace registration and routine inspection of construction sites and issuing of inspection reports. This diagram shows the process model that was developed by the researchers, capturing all the 4 sub-processes and how they interact with each other. To verify the developed process model, the researchers used Microsoft Visio business process modeling and notation rules to check for compliance, and then there was physical inspection of the process model to see if all the activities that are stated out in the OSH statutes were captured accordingly. Empirical verification followed the intra-design verification of the model, and this was done through subject matter expert interviews. The 4 sub-processes were found satisfactory and correctly represented by the subject matter experts. However, a process modification was suggested on the workplace incident reporting, monitoring, recording, and compensation, which is the post-incident management as shown in the next diagram. After process verification as shown, the process model was modified to include post-incident management. Still from the subject matter expert interviews, a number of weaknesses were identified in the as-is process. These were the lack of reporting of incidents to the Labor Department, the lack of reporting of minor incidents that do not incapacitate people for more than 3 working days, the unavailability of centralized recording of incidents, the fact that only the employers are mandated by law to give an incident notice to national OSH managers, a poor relationship between insurance companies and Labor Department, a poor relationship between hospitals, police, and the Labor Department. In conclusion, the researchers set out to describe the as-is system of reporting, recording, monitoring, and management of OSH incidents in Uganda's construction industry, which was done successfully by developing a process model. The as-is process in itself does not provide for centralized recording of incident data, and therefore this data cannot be reliable in informing decision-making on OSH in the country and the construction industry. A number of weaknesses, as mentioned earlier, were observed in the ASIS system, and these included the lack of reporting to the Labour Department and the lack of provision for reporting minor incidents, to mention a few. The system is generally rudimentary, slow, and involving cumbersome documentation and the latter delivery process. The researchers strongly suggest that some of these weaknesses in the ASIS process of OSH incident reporting, recording, monitoring, and management should be tackled through the design of an ICT web-based incident reporting and recording system that is commensurate with the legal framework that governs OSH in Uganda, and that this system should provide additional benefits such as statistical reports, reporting of minor incidents, and whistleblower reporting. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I would also like to thank you on behalf of all the co-authors. Questions are welcome.
Thank you very much, Timothy, although I'm told by your co-author, Apollo, that you're actually not in the session. So I thank you anyway. And an interesting paper, very good insight into the situation that is going on in Uganda in terms of incident reporting. Now, we've got a very strong connection to our second paper here. And so questions, I think, possibly need to take cognizance of the fact that we're then going to look at incident reporting from our second presenters. Do we have any questions that we want to be raised from the floor? I think we've got a hand raised there. Can't quite see the name of that person. Chrissy. It just says C on my screen, but Chrissy, I'm going to promote you to presenter, Chrissy. And you can hopefully, if that works, you can ask your question. Has that worked for you?
Hi.
There you are. Thank you, Chrissy.
There I am. Thanks. So, thank you. Really interesting presentation. I really enjoyed it. As Apollo knows, I love Uganda. I haven't built anything there since 2005, but it's a favourite place. I was really interested in the recommendation around an ICT reporting system, which I thought was had the capability of being really useful. I wondered if Uganda suffered a similar challenge that we do in the UK, where over 70% of accidents are, of course, on small sites with small SMEs. And I know the focus here was of SMEs. And the challenge was, it appears to be in the UK, much more behavioural. So we can't get people to report it on a system, even if they have access to the system. So that just made me wonder about the effectiveness of that system. And perhaps there's a recommendation that comes for a behavioural place before ICT. Thank you.
Thanks, Chrissy. I'm sure Paulo can answer that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Paulo.
Yeah, I will try. I'll also acknowledge a comment from Roy, which asks about or comments that underreporting is a global issue, and he thinks, or he asks that do we think that is more of an industrial cultural problem linked to what Chris has just mentioned, and also asks how can technology assist like ICT in improving the reporting mechanism. So I think, yeah. So it is true that there are cultural issues and ideas of people or individuals that are supposed to be reporting that don't report, and therefore the point that Chrissy raises would apply there. Even when you have an ICT system, if people choose not to report, they will not report. But I think the slight departure from our suggestion is that, or our thinking is that, so at the moment, for example, you find that in the UK, the reporting system, it is the role of the employer to report. Okay? But we are talking about a system that might encourage or allow other people other than the employer to report the incidents, including whistleblowers and so on and so forth. So with with good design, perhaps you can have a system where when incidents occur, people take images. These days, even on SMEs, people have smartphones and if you designed it very well to capture maybe GPS sort of coordinates and so on and so forth, you can bring together different reports to collate, if you like, a good amount of information from different sources that go on to sort of populate that incident and get much more recognition, and also demonstrate to the employers that if they want to report, someone else will report, and maybe link that with legislation to ensure that if they are not reporting, then they are actually criticized or maybe even brought to account for not reporting. So there are cultural issues. I think cultural issues are global, as Roy and Chris mentioned. Yes, people will need to be nudged into reporting. And our argument that current reporting is based on the role of the employer only reporting, we try to address it by broadening the stakeholders that can be empowered to report through this integrated ICT system. I don't know whether that addresses the comments.
Yeah, it absolutely does, and I think it's a good step forward in a big problem.
Well, we haven't worked out the mechanism, but those are our thoughts.
Thanks, Apollo. Yes, I my question is really, what do you do with these data now? And maybe that's one we can put on hold until we actually see the next paper. But there are many layers to this issue. You're grappling with how best to actually capture this information, this data. But what do we then do with these data? And do you just then use it in a study to analyze these data that we might see in the next paper? And as you and Timothy said, the system that you've got is reactive rather than preventative. So you react into situations that are happening. But the golden dream, of course, is can we use this? Can we leverage these data now to actually prevent things happening in the future? I don't know if you've got a quick comment on that, but I think I'm looking forward to seeing what the next presenter's got to say on the matter.
Okay, very quick comment. Our thought is that if the data were available, then it would be used by different stakeholders. Mm-hmm. It might even, particularly if it was published or at least accessible by different stakeholders, that might itself nudge those who are responsible for health and safety to make sure that the data do not include their incidents and therefore do something to minimize the incident. So that's my quick comment, but I can come back.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But converting that and actually doing something. Here's your data, do something with it. I'm not trying to be critical here because it's something I've been looking at for a long time, and I don't think I've got to the bottom of it. We're very good at capturing these informations. What can we do? So I think what I'm going to do is go on to the next paper, next presentation, and questions for this paper and the next one. I think we'll combine them, take view of both papers because they're kind of two sides of the same coin, really. Looking at what we've got here for our next paper, we've got Ebisinbofa, apologies if I've said your name wrong there, from Angela Ruskin, who is ably supported by, I'm assuming, your co-authors Fred and Esther. So exploring the value in near-miss reporting for construction safety. So don't forget, tap to unmute everyone, and we have now nearly 10 minutes of presentation from Ebisinbofa.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ebisinbofa Williams, the second year PhD student at Angela Ruskin University, Department of Engineering and the Built Environment. This paper is looking to explore the value in near-miss reporting for construction site safety. The aim of this research is looking at how we can enhance the value of near-miss reporting in the construction industry. I'm hoping to achieve that by looking at the following objectives. produce an advanced evaluation of near-miss reporting in the construction industry, juxtaposed with other high hazard industries. Also define key features or procedures through which valuable knowledge for safety management can be produced through near misses. That's within the construction site context. And finally, design and develop an effective near miss reporting system that enhances the value of safety learning and that will be generated throughout the process. Context for this study. Construction is considered to be a high-risk industry with harsh working conditions, aggressive work-winning processes. These conditions constitute a major challenge in safety management. From the research seen, you can see that various initiatives and methods have been developed for construction safety management, and one of such initiatives is the use of near-miss reporting. For the purpose of this research, a working definition for near-miss was developed, and is defined as the combination of unsafe conditions and unsafe actions that arise at work in an event that leaves workers defenseless against harm, which did not actually cause harm but may or may not cause property damage, damage to the environment, and or loss of time. Problem in practice. As we can see from across all industries, we can see that near-miss reporting is a common feature of contemporary safety management system. It is often considered as a leading indicator and an evidence of a proactive approach to safety. Companies eagerly adopt or develop near-miss reporting system for use within their operations, looking to capture near-miss knowledge and place mitigations in place to avoid any reoccurrence with potentially more serious consequences. However, research has shown that there can be problems inherent in near-miss reporting, and it can be suggested that any impact on practice has yet to be fully realized. One fundamental challenge is building a system able to both incorporate near misses and successes coherently. In trying to do too much, additional complications can arise. One of such complications is factors of influence ranging from workers simply having the time to engage with reporting to more fundamental confusion as to what a near miss actually is, and so when they should be reported. Also, construction as an industry has a history of underreporting its accidents, and there's also the potential for near miss to also be underreported as part of that shared culture. Also, near miss reporting systems are expensive to set up and maintain, and there's also the issue of blame culture, which has the capacity to impact both under and over reporting of near misses. The importance of value. Critical to any near miss reporting system is that its outputs and outcomes are readily able to add value to the organization's operations, and the resources required to operate that system are proportional to those gains. Near-miss processes must be efficient and effective. Also, consequences of reporting must be easily identifiable by those making the reports. We go over to methods. A mixed method approach was adopted. The data was analyzed qualitatively and quantitatively. The data analyzed here was collected between May 2018 and October 2020, and comprises a total of 3,519 individual reports. Although this data is drawn from just one company, each report is a data point in itself, making this a considerable sample overall. The data collected for this project is naturally occurring and has not been subjected to any researcher bias or influence, and thus has considerable ecological validity. However, this also brings its challenges. One of such challenges is the issue of classification. Labeling unsafe acts as unsafe conditions, near misses as safety concerns, and vice versa. Overall, 890 near miss reports were reduced to 682 based on the working definition of near miss for this research, while 2,414 safety concerns increased to 2,622. Therefore, it is worthy to know that a shared understanding of terminology is important among the workforce. A similar problem of labeling presented here are also found in previous researches. Rating the risk. A further categorization requested by the system when the near miss is imputed is rating of the risk from low risk all the way to significant risk. This was a prescribed category within the system, with users asked to place selective value when making their evaluation from the drop-down menu. As shown in the first chart, the majority of incidents were determined to be low risk, with fewest considered to be a significant risk to company operations. That's the chart for all reports. When near miss were extracted from the data as a whole, their risk profile evaluated, the picture changes to include more reports of incidents with moderate risk, although the profile at the end of the continuum remains relatively similar, with a slight shift from 8% as low risk in all reports to 5.1% in near misses, and a corresponding shift from 3.3% as significant risk in all reports to 7.6% in near misses. Value as evidenced by action. The table shows the association between type of report and reported further action taken. This table reveals that in the majority of all type of reports, recorded further action was only taken after a report in 9.6% of all reports to the system, with no recorded further action taken for 90.4% of all reports. For near misses, this reduces to recorded action taken in response to only 6.9% of near miss reports logged in the system, with about 93.1% reported as no action being taken. There are two explanations for this: either no action was taken or action was taken and not recorded. This therefore suggests that the system is also not supporting the safety managers in the capture and recording of remedial action, perhaps due to the additional administration it necessitates. Overall, this raises concerns about the engagement of both workers and safety managers and the value this near miss reporting process in its current form is bringing to the organization. In conclusion, early findings revealed some potential problems with this bespoke near miss reporting system. Analysis revealed issues around labeling and nomenclature, issues around the questions asked to those reporting, and issues around the value generated by the system from the data, evidenced by the lack of closeout of any learning generated within it. These findings resonate with studies from a number of different industries, suggesting that construction is not unique in having these problems, but also that there is a scope to develop a near miss reporting system able to enhance the value of near miss reporting in the construction industry. This paper presents early findings from a project that aims to do just that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Hopefully you can hear me again. Thank you, Ebisinbofa. That was very interesting, and as I said, it was a good parallel to the first paper that we had. I need to avoid dominating this discussion here because, as you're possibly aware, this is a topic very close to my heart, and I can see that you'd mentioned the work that I've been involved with in about 4 years ago, together with one of your co-authors. We've had a few comments in the chat, and unfortunately that chat, it kind of, if I add 2 comments in, it just adds the next one to the previous comment. But anyway, Chrissy, you were saying, is there an issue here in terms of language or terminology? And And I think so, yes, very much. When we call it near miss, then that is sort of erring on that. Well, you nearly killed yourself there, or this was nearly an accident. What were you thinking of? It's that kind of language, isn't it? And we need to move away from that. We need to move to a no fault situation, and everyone needs to understand that that's what we're trying to get at there. And I put the comment there that I think we can learn a lot from what has happened in other industries, in aerospace, in maritime, in chemical, petrochemical. They've managed to establish this no fault situation. That we're there to learn from these situations. We're there to make sure that we don't repeat our mistakes. Anyway, that's my comment there. Do we have any questions from the floor?
There's none that are coming through that I can see, Simon. I'm echoing your thoughts on terminology. I also think there's a challenge with it's okay to say that there's no fault, but we know that there's criminal prosecution or criminal proceedings at the end of some of these near misses and responsibility. So it's quite a difficult issue to navigate. And I did raise a comment which was linked to Apollo's discussion where regarding whistleblowing, and I'm always keen to see how whistleblowing is protected, and can it be protected? And I don't believe it can. But it's I think it's a really interesting subject. But I can't see anybody else's hands raised. Please raise your hands.
I mean, the whistleblowing thing, Chris, is an interesting one. I mean, there is in parts of our industry a system of confidential reporting. We have confidential reporting in terms of structural safety. That's not quite incidents happening on construction sites, but I don't see why that can't be extended. But that's too much of a blunt instrument in a way. We need to capture the very nuances of situations as they rise, and the problem is, as you point out, if a situation results in a fatality and therefore the subsequent very detailed investigation, any comments that have been made will be used. They will be poured over and used in terms of potential prosecutions, and that makes it very difficult, doesn't it, to avoid this no fault attitude and culture. Someone has put their hand up. Apollo, you speak, and I'll just promote Fred so that she can speak.
Yeah, I was just going to make basically a similar comment to you and Chris, that yes, we can talk about the idea of no fault, but there are some cases where there is actually people at fault. So we have to understand the intricacies of that. And in terms of the whistleblowing idea that we were thinking of in our paper, it was, as I said earlier, linked to the idea that we should, if you like, the system and the new systems should democratize the reporting. So rather than the reporting being dominated by basically the employer, if you can have a system that enables others to report in a manner that is commensurate with the appropriate laws of protection, such as what Simon mentioned in terms of protecting the whistleblowers and other reporters, I think that's the kind of thing we had in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Apollo. So, Fred, you got a comment from you? Fred, can you hear me? Yeah, go for it. Can't hear you. Turn your microphone on.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ebisinbofa Williams.
You try again, Fred.
I'll put it in the chat.
No, I can hear you.
No, we can hear you.
You can hear me, but you can't see me. I can only do the one thing.
Well, that's all right. We'll take your voice rather than your face. Go on.
Oh, I've just clicked something. No, it's well, it links into something Chrissy's put below, because another aspect of this, obviously, yes, as Chrissy's put at the end, in terms of language and positioning. So I'd actually ask Williams, as he casually goes by, if he would like to respond to the question that Chrissy's put there around language terminology and how he's going to take his work forward. I am obviously just being a mean PhD supervisor here by inviting Williams into the space to do that. But are you able to do that, Simon? So Williams can speak a little bit about the language and what he's going to look at from here on in.
Right, I'm clicking on the various icons. So Williams, apologies, that's how you. Are you there? Can you speak? I've put you down as the presenter. You should be able to. Don't seem to be seeing you though.
It was there a while ago, well, a moment ago. Still there, but the icons have gone.
Yeah, it's shown as a presenter, and I did click the various buttons, but there's no video and there's no audio.
William's internet is not the world's greatest, perhaps, and I've just really struggled to make mine work. So yeah. I'm not sure. I could let everyone into the secret.
Fred, you can tell us what well, what you want him to say.
No, so there are obviously these. Who's joining us here?
There we go, Williams. Yeah.
Okay, go for it, Williams.
We can see you, Williams. Can you say something?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go for it.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Chris said, is it Chris? Yeah, Chris. No?
Chrissy.
Yeah, Chrissy. Yeah. Chrissy. The issue of terminology. We should first of all think of companies trying to make employees understand what near misses are, what safety concerns are, what accidents and incidents are. The workers need to be trained, because if, like the issues we have in this data right now, we could see that mix up. People were calling near misses safety concerns and calling safety concerns near misses. If the language is not identifiable, if it's not there, it will just be a case of having quantity data over quality. And if you don't have quality data, there won't be the process where you have to close out data and actually give feedback. And the reason for reporting near misses will be defeated. So the issue of language is very, very important and very, very key.
Okay, thank you, Williams. Yeah, so language is clearly important here, isn't it? It's how we label these things and how we refer to them in order to really allow those people we're really trying to target here to be comfortable in talking about what they need to talk about. To really resolve this big issue, I put a comment in the chat that there is many, many, many layers to this whole problem. We've got to capture these data. We've got to make sure the data is what we want it to be. We've got to make sure we understand what the data is telling us. And then we've got the holy grail of trying to convert these data or use these data or find the utility of these data to go from, if I paraphrase our first presenters, go from a situation of reactive to preventative management strategies in order to make the place safer. Any further comments from anyone on this? I know there's a lot we could talk about.
We've got one from May Shabone.
Yeah, May, sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, go on. As I have looked into accident causation models in my paper, I'm very interested to analysing the language positioning. Yeah, although they are not perfect, but I assume they have a structure to start with. And it is, and part of the problem, and you may have seen this May in terms of your research, is we have these reports, but the way in which those reports themselves are framed and spoken about, and the words used can vary so significantly to make the utility, the usefulness of individual reports very different. I don't know if you wanted to comment any more on that, or our authors. If not, then I will make sure we've got plenty of time to allow our third speaker to present. We may come back to this comment, so don't go away, everyone. We move now to our third paper, and something slightly different, not quite completely different, because it is in the area of well-being, certainly. We've a paper from a number of Irish institutions here, looking at the dietary habits of Irish construction workers, and this is going to be quite an emotive subject, I think, in some ways. And I'm not going to comment until I've seen what is Michael, who our speaker is, and I look forward to seeing what you have to say. Don't forget to tap to unmute, everyone, and here we go.
Hello, my name is Dr. Michael Curran from the Technological University Dublin, and I am a co-author on this paper with Mr. Jack Kenny and Dr. John Spillane from the University of Limerick and Dr. Tara Brooks from Queen's University Belfast. The title of the paper is "Do You Want Some Sauce in That? Factors Influencing Dietary Habits Among the Irish Construction Workforce." Health and safety in the construction industry continues to receive increased attention, where the safety of workers is treated as a serious concern. As it is a highly manual industry, it has one of the highest rates of work-related illnesses across occupational groups. Workers face various issues related to health and well-being, such as musculoskeletal conditions, mental health issues, and physical health deterioration. It is also a high-risk industry for work-related stress, and negative coping behaviours such as alcohol consumption, smoking, and drug misuse is common. However, another challenge and an area of concern for occupational health and safety is nutrition. Nutrition plays an invaluable role in health and safety performance and productivity improvements. Poor nutrition is one of many causes of accidents and injuries on construction sites, and construction workers have poor health due to poor nutrition. Thus, research on the nutrition of construction workers is necessary, as they are the most important assets in the industry. On review, previous research fails to acknowledge and highlight the actual factors influencing dietary and nutritional habits among construction workers, particularly within an Irish context. The lives of workers outside of work has great implications, and it is an area often taken for granted. Regarding Irish construction site workers, it is necessary to identify and evaluate what factors influence their dietary habits, and more importantly, establish strategies that can be implemented to improve their dietary habits and overall health and well-being. Therefore, this study aims to identify and analyse the factors that influence dietary habits among on-site construction workers in Ireland, and document the effects, if any, diet has on their well-being and productivity. This study encompasses qualitative analysis, and following an introduction, a literature review based on the diet and nutrition of workers in construction is undertaken. Following the literature review, 10 semi-structured individual interviews are carried out across 2 construction projects based in the Munster region of Ireland. Some of the interviewees included a project manager, a graduate site manager, general operatives, and tradesmen. The interviews were analysed using coding and thematic analysis techniques. This led to a discussion of findings and a conclusion and recommendations. Further details can be found in the main paper. The individual interviews commenced by gaining general background information from each participant. This was followed by a candid conversation about their own daily diet and their dietary habits whilst working in the construction industry. Findings from the 10 interviews were combined and qualitatively assessed and summarised using both coding and thematic analysis techniques. Analysis of the interviews was conducted by establishing emerging themes from the transcripts, including keywords and topics for discussion. A concise summary of the key findings are illustrated here in Table 1, with many areas covered, such as individual diets, cooking habits, breakfast routines, commutes to work, and the standard of welfare facilities for eating on site. It is important to note that the findings from the individual interviews are specific to this research, thus not a generalised view. Nonetheless, this study provides a foundation to explore further, supporting continuous research into diet and nutrition, in particular the habits of construction workers in Ireland. Five key themes are identified, including lack of education, time management, peer pressure, poor eating facilities on site, and the cost of food. Considering the first theme, lack of education, 6 out of the 10 interviewees agreed that they were not educated enough on the benefits of a healthy diet, and this was particularly evident among the older participants. One interviewee, who had over 30 years industry experience, stated that during his training days as an apprentice, no one ever advised him on the benefits of a nutritional diet, and he did admit to being ignorant to any health-related initiatives on site. The literature supports that for the older generation of construction workers, eschewing healthy diets and help seeking is normative. Also, the graduate site manager, a recent construction management graduate from a very respected Irish university, also claimed that the topic of nutrition was never taught or discussed during his 4 years of study. The literature highlights that the first step towards improving nutrition and encouraging behavioural change is through nutritional knowledge and education. Time to eat at any time of the working day was a key issue identified by the interviewees. 50% stated that they skip breakfast regularly, with reasons ranging from having a long commute to work and preferring to stay in bed longer for a few extra minutes. 70% revealed that their commute to work in the morning was greater than 30 minutes, with some travelling over an hour to get to the site. The literature supports that construction workers have poor nutrition due to long, time-consuming travel to workplaces. Furthermore, all 10 interviewees stated that they have insufficient time to eat lunch on site. One remarked how he would go to the nearest shop most days to grab some hot food such as chicken nuggets and chips from a deli counter and eat it in the van as he drove back to the site. Again, the literature supports that a culture of dashboard dining exists in the Irish construction industry, and workers who do not have time to eat rely on sweets, fizzy drinks, burgers and fries. Workers feeling pressurised by colleagues in choosing what to eat was an interesting factor identified, with 60% being influenced by the food choices of others. The graduate site manager discussed that because of his involvement in sport outside of work, he would bring his own healthy lunch with him on most days, but this did raise eyebrows among the older workforce. Another interviewee stated that he would go for breakfast with his colleagues some days, even though he may not have always wanted to, but he did not want to feel left out among his peer group, or have his colleagues talking negatively about him for doing so. Again, the literature highlights that the food choices of workers are influenced by their poor dietary role models, including their peers and co-workers. Furthermore, one can be peer pressured into eating healthily or unhealthily. The fourth theme identified was poor eating facilities on site, and only 3 out of the 10 interviewees believed that the eating and general welfare facilities on site were of an acceptable standard. Construction workers have poor dietary behaviours due to limited on-site catering facilities. Nutrition is also linked with food hygiene and safety, thus the provision of welfare facilities such as hot water for washing before eating, safe drinking water and space to prepare and eat meals are very essential. The cost of food was another prominent factor identified, and 80% of the interviewees discussed how the cost of food influenced their food choice. The literature highlights that the cost of healthy food, for apprentices in particular, is prohibited given their low apprentice wages. Also, some of the general operatives acknowledged that they sometimes spent their money on cigarettes, tobacco and alcohol instead of food. And the literature supports that construction workers are prone to health risk factors of smoking, nutrition and alcohol. The key contribution of this research illustrates that many factors influence the dietary habits of Irish construction workers on site. With the right opportunities and appropriate training and educational awareness, productivity can be increased and the health and well-being of the workforce can be maintained on construction sites in Ireland. Overall, this study provides a solid foundation to advance and explore further, supporting continuous research into the dietary habits and influencing factors on site workers on construction projects in Ireland. Thank you for listening.
Michael, thank you very much for that. I don't know if you are in the call. I know one of your co-authors at least is. I keep seeing my participant list says empty for some reason, but anyway, I'm pretty sure we do have people there. Do we have any questions? Anyone want to raise their hand? I mean, there's quite a few comments in the chat about this.
Michael is here, Simon.
So Michael is here, is he? For some reason, as I say, I'm not seeing that in my participants list. But anyway,
I've requested audio and
right, good, okay. So Fred's waving her hand. I'm sure she's got something she wants to say. So Fred, you're there. So why don't you turn your microphone on just and ask away?
Hello.
Michael, is that you?
Yes, how are you doing, Fred?
I'm all right, lovely. Good to hear from you, Chuck. Thank you for this. So I have a question. To what extent are you... So this is something I've actually written about. I wrote a paper in 2014 for ARCOM called We Will Force You to Be Well, because this is something I struggle with. Back in the day, I enjoyed spending all my money on beer and fags, to be quite honest. And I would have been very, very upset if anyone had suggested I do otherwise. How are you splitting this down from individual responsibility to firm? Because there is a lot of noise in the CSR area, which this sort of falls under, whereby what is happening is firms are actually personalising and othering things. So what a worker eats, that's the worker's choice. That's now their problem, not ours. But a number of things that you mentioned were systemic. For example, long commutes, day schedules. The other thing is the provision of welfare as a kind of supplement for well-being if you work on site is quite interesting. That's coming up more and more in mental health research as well, by the way. Total tangent there, Fred, shut up. So to what extent are you actually thinking about separating out what is the firm's responsibility here? Because this could be seen as a potential othering distraction from the fact that they do have responsibility, but perhaps not to dictate what people eat, but to enable them to do the right things more realistically. So are you pulling that apart in this research, please?
Well, I suppose, Fred, the first thing, it was an exploratory study across the couple of case studies. Again, with time and everything else, we would like to have broadened that. But hopefully after maybe talking to the likes of yourself and some of the other feedback from today, we would be definitely interested in pursuing that and researching it further. The big thing that I found, that we did find within this study, it was the mentality and the mindset of the interviewees themselves. There's a mentality with maybe the professional. So if it was, with the more office-based roles, where it was the graduate manager or the project manager, that they had, a better routine, a better lifestyle. Whereas it was more so the labourer or the operatives, where they were the guys that were, skipping lunch and maybe saving up their money on the fags and booze. And again, we don't like to stereotype that, but that was the generalisation that we found. And definitely in Ireland, because Ireland's such a rural country and the main projects are in the urban areas, in the cities and the bigger towns, that there is such a large commute in the mornings, and this dashboard dining culture does exist. And the title of this paper, Do You Want Some Sauce in That? This came from a song by an Irish comedian called Pat Short. I've actually alluded to it in the paper. and it talks about the jumbo breakfast roll that you go to the hot food counter in the morning and you get everything piled at the top in a roll. So that is where this came from. But definitely the difference between the mindset and the attitudes between the different operatives and the management tiers, we found was the big difference there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it'd be interesting. Yeah, I would urge you to gun for the systemic rather than the individual. And I remember working on site alongside, I think it was the scaffold foreman, every day mackerel on toast because it's good for your brain. So there you go. It made the place stink, but at least it was healthy. Anyway, thank you very much, Michael. Cheers, lovely.
Thank you, Fred.
Thanks, Fred. I mean, yes, this is a motive. I know that you've written about this previously, and you've got to be careful that you're not being too paternalistic, I suppose, here, and because the reaction you might get from some workers is completely opposite to what you might want. I'm wondering, and apologies if it's in the paper, Michael, that I've not picked up, but what I have a feeling that this is going to vary quite considerably in terms of the size of a project. And you may be able to comment on the size of the projects that you got your data from. And I'm reminded of a documentary which was on in the UK recently about probably one of the biggest construction projects in Europe, if not in the UK, which is the Hinkley Point nuclear power project. And it was remarkable in terms of the canteens that they had. The catering was a huge endeavour, and they were very focused on making sure that it was, nutritional, that it was well balanced, that it was the right kind of food, and that was provided. And you'd picked up on one of the points in terms of your outcomes, which was, if I just quickly go through it, in terms of, poor eating facilities on site. I'm sure that is connected very much in terms of the size of the site. The small site with a very small porter cabin is not going to have the same facilities as a very large, very well-served construction project. Any comments on that?
No, definitely. I fully agree. Yes, the two construction projects, the two case studies in this paper were of a smaller scale. Now, for Irish construction projects in the areas that they were located were considerably big, but however, there was no on-site canteen as such. Like I do remember being on site a couple of years back as part of my PhD studies, and being in this canteen on a mega project, multi-billion pound project in London. And yes, you could see that Fred touched on as well, the CSR, the CCS, were posters littered around on the way into the site, or on the way into the canteen and around the canteen. There were, a range of healthy options, moving away slightly from the stereotype that is there. So yes, I do fully agree that the size of the project and the value and all the rest of that is a considerable factor, and it's something that I feel that I would like to pursue further.
Yeah, and there's more to be understood here, and I'm very aware that this is an exploratory study. You're not trying to provide things which are implementable. But we'll go to other comments in a moment if necessary. But if you don't mind, I can't let this one go because I've noticed that in the introductory and the framing of your work, you use the word productivity, and I'm just wondering what you really mean by that. Because if you're framing this work to try and influence the productivity of workers through their dietary habits and dietary choices, that could be problematic. We any safety investigation, any safety work, we need to improve safety to get better productivity. I have a problem with that, and I don't know if you've got a comment to make on that area.
That it's something that I would like to look into further, and something probably I would like to discuss with you at some other stage afterwards. It's definitely worthy of talking about further. Again, bringing back to what Fred was talking about a couple of moments ago, I think, without criticising my own work, definitely one thing I would agree with her saying is that the interviews were very much focused on the individual, rather than, the whole general organisation of that. And, again, I can just think of an example of the young graduate site manager. He was he was a footballer, very fit, very active. So he had reason to eat healthily anyway, whether he was working on site or not. Whereas versus the older some of the older operatives that were used to years and years of, I suppose, neglect and just routine and the bad habits that they've fallen into. And does that have an overall effect on their productivity? Maybe so. Something that I did that obviously wasn't able to prove or disprove in this paper, but now that this has been discussed today, it's definitely something that I would like to take further.
Yeah. There's a lot that can be done here, and possibly picking up on Chris's chat comment there. How do you position productivity? It's all in the framing. It's all in the framing of your work. Yes, you've got an exploratory study here, and there's a lot to learn, a lot to understand. But it's we've all got to be careful about how we frame our work, and really how do we address the why question? Why is this work being done? I'm more than happy to speak with you separately about this, Michael. It's something that I've had a lot of thought about in the past, but I don't want to dominate too much the discussion here. Do we have any final comments from anyone else? Any final questions? There's been some very good chat comments here, and I'm very appreciative for that. There's a lot of comments in terms of diet influencing awareness, and
Fidelius has made a few comments. Maybe he wants to do it. So is Roy, if they want to speak. Talking about lunch gaps from Roy, and lunch gaps and lunch naps from Roy. Depends on maybe that's something. I don't know whether anybody wants to speak.
We got somebody from Spain.
No,
I've requested Vidilius and Roy just in case they want to have a. Yeah, Roy.
Whilst they're waiting, I was going to answer in the chat your question there, Apollo. In terms of what is wrong with using productivity, there's nothing wrong with trying to increase productivity, but if we're trying to address safety, well-being things by saying, well, the reason we're doing this is because we want to get more out of you guys. We want to get more output from you all, and I want to, and I don't really care about your well-being. I just want to get more productivity. Anyway,
you hear me?
there. Please go ahead for them.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Chris, for including us in the conversation. Apollo asked a question about if you have got an issue, Simon, with linking diet to productivity. And having read your editorial recently about not having concrete evidence that links health and safety to productivity, perhaps you want to elaborate on your question.
So is that a question for me, Fidelis?
Yes. For you.
This shouldn't be about me, but that's what I was just saying before. I just find that they're trying to connect, ideals of safety and well-being, for which it's very difficult to argue against, to issues of productivity. I think striving for productivity is okay, and striving for safety and well-being is okay, but to use one against the other for me is problematic. And improving productivity, could end up having negative consequences in terms of safety and well-being as well. So let's not get too involved in that. We've kind of gone over time a little bit, but it's an area of again, it's coming back to the framing. Why do we do this work? Why do we want to do this? And we've got, as researchers, we've got to be very careful, I think, in terms of our framing, to make sure we're posing the right why questions.
I think Roy might want to say one thing or the other. Roy?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Roy. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I just typed some of my comments because I don't really know much about nutrition, but I guess it might be something cross-disciplinary because also evolve some nutrition knowledge. I believe what you eat will really affect your physical or the physiological reaction. Some food making me really drowsy and sleepy in the afternoon. Yeah. And also it's really cultural. If you compare the workers' diet crossing the different countries, it can be really, really different. And also, I guess it's the local weather. If you think about the Middle East, the Doha World Cup stadium under construction, it's very hot there. The workers and players cannot really be comfortable there.
No.
So, yeah, it's going to be very different from the colder regions, I think.
I think you're absolutely right there. I think the jumbo breakfast roll wouldn't go down as well in Doha as possibly Dublin. There's so many factors and influences in this issue, isn't there? We must draw to a close in a moment. I'm just looking. Thank you for your contributions, Fidelis and Roy. Let me just have a look at this final comment here from May. I'm reflecting a little on my diet choice. I wonder how the systematic conditions of blue-collar workers and office workers are different or similar. What would make the diet habits and office worker better than the one working on construction site? Well, again, you've touched upon something else there in terms of blue-collar stroke office worker. I'm interested in this point that came back in terms of from Michael's work, peer pressure. We're all in cultural environments where we are pressured in our choices by those we work with. And I'm absolutely convinced that is different on a construction site than it is in an office. And I would be very interested in seeing more reflection in that area. Do we have? I'm going to give a last opportunity to Michael to make a last comment. Anything you want to say, Michael?
I just want to thank you all, Simon. I didn't think there would be as much, feedback and commentary on this. It's definitely a worthy topic. I'm glad that we were able to undertake it, and would definitely like to pursue it. And if any of the speakers have further information that they would like to provide, then please do get in touch. I'd be delighted to hear from you. I'd be very interested to hear the different cultural aspects in the different countries. There's definitely something worth exploring further.
There is definitely, yeah. Mike, well done, Michael. I, on the other hand, was not surprised by the number of comments we have on this. This is an emotive topic. It gets right to the heart of everyone, not just construction workers. So you've touched a rich vein there, and best wishes for tapping that in the future.
Thank you very much, Simon.
So thank you, everyone. We've slightly gone over time, but I think we've had a wonderful discussion. I appreciate everyone turning their cameras on and asking questions. Thank you, Fidelis. Thank you, Roy, Fred, Chris, Apollo, Chrissy, and our other speakers. A superb session. Go and enjoy your lunch and enjoy this afternoon sessions as well. Thank you very much, everyone.